Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. As part of your comprehensive news analysis today, we'll be discussing 6 important articles out of the Hindu Newspaper Daily Edition. But before we begin, as always, there are very important reminder for you that we have our third session and the last session of Science and Technology within Target Prelims 2023, and it's on at 7:30 on the YouTube channel itself. And I hope that you are actually following this whole series very closely, because this is the last session of Science and Technology. However, we'll be going to international relations here on, then government schemes, then art and culture, and then reports and indices, and we'll end with places in news. We've already covered economy, polity, environment, and today we'll be completing science and technology. So 7th, do join this session, and I hope that you're finding it constructive in your preparation generally. Now, with this, let's look at the topics we have to cover today. The paper, because it's a Sunday paper, has no editorial. However, there were some interesting articles which were discussing certain important points generally related to GS paper 3 and one related to GS paper 2. So we have the first vaccine in the world itself for what is called RSV, or respiratory syncytial virus, RSV. And it's a very interesting discussion vis-a-vis how it impacts both very young children and old age above 60, and we'll talk about the implications of this vaccine itself for RSV. Thereafter, we'll talk about a very major development wherein there was a drone attack over the Kremlin itself, and how the trend with vis-a-vis the Russia-Ukraine crisis is only going more towards escalation rather than de-escalation. Then Charles III, the new king of the United Kingdom, and in a way, it's a paradox in this modern world that we have these old relics of the past along with the modernity and what technology we live in. And we'll talk about that when we'll reach this topic, prelims-oriented topic generally. Thereafter, we've discussed the TB vaccine, the TB disease quite a lot on this platform. And there is a new breakthrough vis-a-vis how DNA mutations can tell us how multi-drug resistant TB can be technically diagnosed very quickly and can help us stop the spread of multi-drug resistant TB. Thereafter, we'll talk about cotton and how Punjab and Haryana are now becoming the new hubs for that. And last but not the least, something related to art and culture, a language dictionary, a technical language dictionary for 10 very important languages out of the 8 schedule generally. So we will be discussing these topics vis-a-vis mains orientation, prelims orientation in the first 2, and then more towards prelims orientation in the last 4. So with this, let's enter our discussion for today. Good morning, and I hope that you are totally comfortable with the way we are covering CNE. So the first discussion is with regards to FDA, which is the authority in America. It is the Food and Drug Authority in America. It has actually approved the first vaccine all across the world for what is called respiratory syncytial virus, RSV we'll call it. So respiratory syncytial virus, first let's try to understand, as we always do, the basic point, then go into the nitty-gritty, and then the implications, and then the summary. So the RSV virus itself is very important for you generally now, because first we have a vaccine across the world, and now it's a disease for your science and technology, GS paper 3. Important because you need to know, because we tend to take RSV as common cold. However, RSV and common cold are different, and I'll give you that basic understanding of how are they different. So it impacts mostly very young children or old age above 60, 50 plus you are at risk of RSV itself. And if you look at the symptoms, you will see fever, coughing, runny nose are standard, what we call as symptoms for common cold also. You will find it in COVID-19 also, but there's a degree of severity which is different. On the other hand, prevention is also the same. Mask, washing hands, and no close contact with the person who has RSV. And generally across the world, as of right now, we can only mitigate RSV. There's no vaccine. Though we have common cold vaccine, we have the COVID-19 vaccine. RSV was something which was not having a vaccine generally. Now, this disease, the vaccine as of right now is only for 60 plus. However, it is an important development because now we are going to go slowly down the age bracket, and we could have by next year or next to next year a vaccine for infants also. So the basic point is that it is one of the most common diseases and one of the most deadliest diseases in infants itself, because the highest risk is mostly young children less than 1 year, and very, very old people who have compromised immune systems or comorbidities. Comorbidities means that they already have diabetes, they already have blood pressure issues, they already have certain issues in their respiratory tract, and then RSV hits them. Therefore, it becomes a reason for their death. So the fatality is mostly either in young children or in people who have weakened immune system generally, and that is a very common concept nowadays, because in old age we do have this problem wherein the immune system is not working to the optimal level. Now, as I said, the gestation period is 3 to 7 days, and symptoms are very standard: fever, chest congestion, cough, difficulty in breathing, wheezing, and generally runny nose. So if you look at it, these are very common symptoms across India which infants have, which you and me also get affected with. But we tend to not talk about RSV in India, and that is the most important concept for this article itself, the larger concept, wherein India also needs to take cognizance of RSV, and we also need to bring in the infrastructure and the vaccine for this, at least specifically for our infants. So treatment, as I said, antibiotics will technically not work because it's a virus. So therefore, it is about mitigating the symptoms, and through specific medication, you have to let the virus weaken in the body itself. The most important point is, because it is a virus, antibiotics are not going to work. So one thing you would have seen, there are certain common cold and RSV don't get affected, much like COVID-19, by antibiotics. This is a very dangerous concept, and because fluids will start to build up in the respiratory tract, it is dangerous for children also and for old age generally, because this is a very common system, and you would have heard for sure that the lungs are filling up with water. That is because of RSV itself. So standard prevention tactics: no contact, washing hands, stay away from the person who has RSV. But what is the quantum? What is the quantum? So first we try to understand what is RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, and how does it affect us, and the basic symptoms are quite the same. Further, we have now tried to understand how does it impact infants and what are the basic symptoms, and the treatment generally is about the mitigation of the infection. No, there is no basic medication for it. Vaccines can help us make sure that RSV does not become too, what we call as severe. So when the body is already introduced to RSV, there is a better immune response to it. And as of right now, the biggest breakthrough, that is why we are discussing it, is that on May 3rd, the Food and Drug Administration Authority of America has now approved the first vaccine, which is XAV, which is a RSV lower respiratory tract vaccine for people older than 60 years. Now this is the catch. This vaccine, which is the first anywhere in the world, is not for infants. So as of right now, the most important and the most vulnerable group are still infants only. But the older than 60 years, what is there, that because they have comorbidities, they already have a compromised immune system, we are going for 60 plus first. Then we will move to 50 to 60, and thereafter we'll move to infants. So what is the quantum? Why was there a need for an RSV vaccine itself? And the point was that in America itself, and in India we have no understanding of this because we don't test for RSV, close to 60,000 to 1,20,000 hospitalizations happen because of RSV. 6 to 10,000 people in America die because of this above 65 years of age, because of having comorbidities, which is they already have issues in their body, and this RSV, though harmless if you have a good immune system, impacts them and they lose their life. And because the symptoms are quite similar to common cold, people are not able to differentiate between them. So it's not just that the old age or old people are at risk. Children in India also, across the world, but specifically in the US, there are 58,000 to 80,000 children in the US younger than 5 years who get hospitalized because of RSV, and the mortality here is 100 to 300 children dying because of RSV itself. So it's a major issue vis-a-vis that basically it's a very harmless infection if it happens to you and me at the age between that 5 to 50. However, when it is affecting below 5 or above 50, then it becomes very deadly. Because below 5 also you have an issue with your immunity, and above 50 you again have an issue with your immunity, and specifically for children it is quite dangerous. So as of right now, it's about older than 60. However, they're going to reduce it as we go forward, and the efficiency is 82.6% to 94%, which is acceptable for a vaccine vis-a-vis something like this, which is a common cold type vaccine. So before I go into how do we compare it with COVID-19 or other diseases itself, let's try to understand the basic perspective here. First, a vaccine for RSV, syncytial virus itself. Second, affects infants and old people both. So in both age brackets, less than 5 and more than 50. And very specifically, it is a viral disease, therefore no antibiotics. Antibiotics will work more on bacteria. And last but not the least is the fact that there is a major need for it, because if this is the case in the US, it means across Asia, across India, there would be also a sizable portion of the population which is getting this disease, but we don't know about it. We talk about TB, we talk about common cold, but we don't talk about RSV. So RSV should be now in the radar of the government of India as a new virus which needs to be taken into cognizance, and we need the infrastructure to basically mitigate it. Now, how does it compare with the cold, flu, COVID-19 and RSV? And if you look at it, there are the basic symptoms are quite the same. So you have aches, difficulty in breathing, fatigue, fever, loss of taste and smell, sore throat and wheezing. Now the more excess you have, that is the more severe in that disease. The more green you have is more rare. So if you look at it, let's compare COVID-19 and RSV. If you look at it, COVID-19, the body ache is more. RSV, mostly body ache is not there. Breathing difficulty, severity is there in both, but quite a lot in COVID-19, we know that. Further, fatigue again is very much in COVID-19, but not or very rarely in RSV. Further, fever both, but loss of taste and smell very rarely in RSV, but we will have it in COVID-19. Sore throat, quite a lot in COVID-19, but RSV, it is quite rare. On the other hand, wheezing is less in COVID-19, more in RSV. So basically, the most common system is wheezing. So if you look at it, COVID-19 very distinctly has three major things: breathing difficulty, fatigue and loss of taste and smell, plus sore throat. On the other hand, here it's more about wheezing and along with that fever and difficulty in breathing. And now if we look at it vis-a-vis cold itself, the major difference here is that if you have a cold and you don't have difficulty in breathing and fever that much, and maybe you don't have loss of taste and smell, then it's a cold and not RSV or COVID-19. I've given you this basically as a form of comparison, and you can see basically that these two manifest themselves in different areas: body ache, fatigue and fever. However, COVID-19 is more about loss of taste and smell and sore throat. On the other hand, wheezing is the most common thing in RSV. So therefore, we have a whole plethora of symptoms which are common to each one of them, but the severity is different. This is what I told you, that nobody is asking you a question vis-a-vis what are the symptoms. But I am trying to give you a very basic perspective wherein you can see that all are viral diseases, but they have their different manifestations. COVID-19 being the most dangerous that way is because difficulty in breathing and sore throat plus loss of taste and smell manifests itself in the most severe form. So now, what is the point of this discussion? What is the way forward? It's a significant development. We have the first vaccine in the world. However, India now needs to take cognizance of this, because as of right now, this is a very American-centric news. So, India, RSV is common, we know that. However, we don't test for RSV. So there are three things which you need to take away from this article before we move to the next one. First and foremost thing is that RSV vaccine is available for people above the age of 60 now in America. So it will spread across. It will be an expensive virus, but it will be across India and Asia. It should come through. Second, it is still not targeting the most vulnerable group, which is infants 0 to 5. Third, we need a major push in India for RSV to be recognized as a disease which can manifest itself in infants and old age with comorbidity, and therefore we need to know that there are not just these three, which is cold, flu and COVID-19. We need to know that there is also a syncytial virus, respiratory syncytial virus, which is RSV, which needs to be taken into cognizance. This should be part of our healthcare now. We need to be clear that it is not RSV. If we are understanding the symptoms, we also need to understand the symptom of RSV. So we cannot just work in this trilogy of flu, cold and COVID-19. We need to add another angle to it, which is RSV. So RSV that is why generally important for you and me, because now it's a virus which generally we don't talk about. You will not find it in standard books, and now is in the news, and with the vaccine it becomes important generally for your preparation. So I hope that you understand the point of this discussion. Vaccine in America will spread across the world. Further, only vaccine available across the world. Moderna and Pfizer are also coming up with it. We don't care about the companies. Second is that it is quite common to the other three. However, there is a lot of differences, and we need to add RSV to our healthcare system. We need to be cognizant, we need to be conscious of this new virus. Not a new virus generally, but for India, we need to add it into our healthcare system as a new type of symptom which we need to understand. Because we technically don't talk about RSV in India. There is no scheme, or generally our doctors would work in this trilogy rather than adding RSV to it. So this is now becoming a focus area for us generally. Okay, I hope this article is totally clear, and we can move on to a very interesting development vis-a-vis what is called Ukraine and Russia. Now Ukraine, Russia, if you have been following the news, you would have seen these very dramatic images, which is the Kremlin Palace as it is called. It is the quarters or the apartment of the president is in this building itself, along with certain ministries. And it has been believed that there was a drone which was hovering over this area, and Russia had to shoot it down. And once they shot it down, it exploded over Kremlin itself. Now, just to give you a basic reference, Kremlin would be the equivalent of Rashtrapati Bhavan and North Block, South Block in a way. And imagine a drone be shot over North Block, South Block. It is going to be quite significant. Now, obviously, Ukraine says that it is not our drone. However, Russia claims it is a terrorist attack by Ukraine on Russian soil itself. But this is not just a random event. What we've seen is that whilst the initial push between Russia and Ukraine was Russia going internal into Ukraine and attacking Ukrainian cities, now Ukraine has changed its counter-offensive, wherein now Ukraine has technically gone into 50, 60, close to 100 and 120 kilometers inside Russian borders, and they're hitting infrastructure, they're hitting a lot of important critical buildings, and this is seen as a escalation which is now very dangerous for this whole what we call a saga called Ukraine and Russia. We know that Ukraine-Russia is based on the larger push and pull between NATO countries, and Russia needs Ukraine vis-a-vis Sevastopol, which they already have by the Crimean Peninsula. They need the resources, and generally it is about the indifferent attitude which the West has towards Ukraine. Now everybody wants to help Ukraine generally, but when Ukraine wanted to be a NATO member, nobody gave it the membership generally. So it was like a buffer state between Russia and NATO, and now Russia is just forcing the issue. So there's a much larger story here. Now this has been going on for now close to 1.5 years. So the basic point of the matter is that this is not a good trend, because this means that this war is only escalating. And escalation means that Russia-Ukraine has already shown that it has an impact on Europe, it has an impact on oil prices, it has an impact generally on energy, and therefore, if this escalates into full-blown war, as of right now it is Russian occupation of Ukraine. Ukraine is responding. But if it escalates into something much bigger, then it could be that it has impact on generally everybody across the world, because then it will mushroom into a much bigger issue. As of right now, we don't get too much because it is happening in the Ukrainian sector. But if the world gets divided into two camps, this is a prelude to what happened in the First and the Second World War, that very small local issues started to become very, very big. And the world started to divide itself in this way. These small incidents actually add up to become world wars. So the suggestion is not that this is the prelude of the Third World War, which is obviously a very big statement. But the point is, this war is not de-escalating or not de-accelerating. It is only accelerating. So the basic point of this article, and then we'll go into nitty-gritty because there was another insignificant development. The basic point of the article is that now it is not that Russia is entering Ukraine. Now Ukraine is also crossing the border and hitting Russia, which is something significant. And as it is, this has now become a testing ground for a lot of equipment and a lot of defense material. Because in this whole development, and we'll talk about a dangerous trend later, there is a very important missile which is called the Kinzhal. Kinzhal or the Kinzhal missile is a very advanced Russian hypersonic missile. So it goes 10 times faster than the speed of sound, can touch Mach 12. So the Kinzhal or the dagger is a very, very lethal weapon which is mostly deployed through the Sukhoi 30 or Sukhoi 28. But the point is that recently Ukraine using American Patriot missile defense system have actually shot down a Kinzhal missile. So now Kinzhal is known to be the most lethal Russian weapon they have. A hypersonic missile could be equivalent, cannot be called an equivalent, but it would be a brother of BrahMos in that sense. And 2,000 kilometer range, it has now been hit by the American Patriot defense system, and now Ukraine has the equipment to even have defense against Russian hypersonic missiles. So this interception was a surprise to Moscow, because generally Patriot defense system is not known because the radar should not be able to target or even detect the Mach 10, Mach 12 Kinzhal missile. But the radar did, and thereafter the missile did intercept the Kinzhal missile. So now you can see that there are two basic perspectives. First is that it is escalating. Second is that now the weaponry is also becoming more and more advanced. Russia till this point had never used the Kinzhal, which is a hypersonic missile, proper cruise missile. Now, if you add to it the fact that America has an answer to it, now it will only lead to another arms race wherein Russia will try to develop something which is more advanced than Kinzhal. So this is a very, very dangerous trend, and you need to understand the implications of it. We have forgot about Russia-Ukraine because it is happening in the background, but this is something which is very slowly escalating and becoming more and more dangerous. So the dangerous trend is that previously for Russians, it was something which was happening far away from home, but now with drone attacks happening inside Russia and specifically on Kremlin itself, this is going to be a dangerous precedence, and the concept that now Russians are not safe in Russia itself. So just few days before the Second World War Victory Day, that is why you see this is the whole what we call as stands which have been created, which is the ceremony to celebrate how the Second World War was actually Victory Day, that is a celebration day. And on just before it, 3 days before it, they have actually done this drone strike. Obviously, Ukraine will never say that they have done it, but Russia is claiming it is Ukraine. So Kremlin has classified it as a planned terrorist attack and assassination on the president. Therefore, it is only going to be seen as a further escalation. Ukraine has denied involvement, saying that it's a false flag operation. Generally, they are doing it to themselves to escalate the war more. And this could be true, but it's not the isolated event, because Ukraine has started to go for deep strikes inside Russia. Because, for example, on 29th, we already had a major attack on a fuel depot in Sevastopol, which is already occupied, Russian-occupied Kremlin. Russia occupied the Crimean Peninsula. Thereafter, on May 1st, there was again in the Gut, China region of St. Petersburg, a major power line was blown up. Further, on 2nd May, in the Bryansk region itself, a railway track was damaged. So therefore, you can see that now they are entering into the Russian sector and damaging critical infrastructure. So from Sevastopol was a major setback, because Sevastopol has been an all-weather port for Russia for quite a long time, for centuries that ways. But the basic point of the matter is, once Ukraine was created, it went to Ukraine. Thereafter, in 2014, the Russian occupation of Crimean Peninsula, taking Sevastopol, and now Ukraine attacking Crimean Peninsula in a way and impacting Sevastopol. Sevastopol, that was a very, very major escalation. So there's a lot of things we've talked about in this article. Let's try to understand the implications, and then we'll move to the Prelims Bytes section. The first article what we've discussed was basically a vaccine for the RSV, the respiratory syncytial virus, and it's very significant, impacts both infant and old people. More than that, first vaccine, but in India we need to add it to our healthcare system. We need to be more cognizant of it. Second is about this major escalation in the Russia-Ukraine saga, wherein previously it was only Ukraine which was getting impacted by deep strikes from Russia. But now Russia can see that Ukraine is crossing the border quite a lot, and the Kremlin bombing, if you want to say, or the drone strike in a way, is a new high in this story. And we are moving very specifically into a certain direction which is not good, which is further escalation. So for you, for GS paper 2, it is important because you need to understand the trend. The trend is no de-escalation, no talks, only further use of bigger and more advanced weaponry. And the fact that the Patriot defense missile system was able to intersect Kinzhal is a very significant development, because these two systems had never come face to face. So now Ukraine using American Patriot system, and Kinzhal was never used in Ukraine itself. Both systems come together and the Patriot system has been able to intercept it, is very significant for Russia, because now Russia needs to change its approach. So Russia, Ukraine, not showing signs of de-escalation, only further escalation. So I hope that you understand the basic point of these two articles, and generally they are talking about GS paper 2 and GS paper 3, very significant issues which can come in the examination. With this, let's enter the Prelims Bytes section. When we talk about the Prelims Bytes section, we get this interesting, whatever you want to call it, an image which is coming out of the United Kingdom, which is the crowning of King Charles III as he's confirming as, or getting coronated as it is called. He is now coronated as the king. He is now crowned as the king. Now the image itself should bring in a lot of images. For us as Indians, this is an image of oppression. This is an image of Kohinoor. This is an image of how these relics of the past, these obsolete institutions still exist. In UK itself, there were both sides to this coronation, the regal ceremony. People were happy, obviously, but there was a lot of protests also which happened. Not my king. The fact that the British taxpayer pays close to 600 million pounds to the maintenance of this very small family is quite significant that way. Now, from our side, as a ex-colonial country, as India, it brings in a lot of memories, and if it doesn't, it should. And that was reflected in the way that how neither the Prime Minister, neither the President went for the ceremony. It was the Vice President, Jagdeep Dhankar, who actually went there. From France, you have Macron and his wife, and from the US, you had the First Lady, which is Jill Biden. But the point is that, yes, at Westminster Abbey, Charles III has now got coronated as a British king, and he's technically ascended at the throne at the age of 74, which is quite late, and is now the titular head of the UK and the other 14 Commonwealth countries. It's nothing to rejoice about. It's nothing to be happy about. It's significant for your preparation generally because now there's a whole discussion about the concept of monarchy. UK has been a constitutional monarchy for now close to 5 to 6 centuries. The simple point of the matter is that my task is to give you the fact that he's now been crowned as king. 2-hour ceremony happened. It had a lot of interesting aspects where vis-a-vis you had a black choir, meaning you had a African choir in that regard. You had Rishi Sunak reciting the Bible. Quite a lot of interesting things that way. Two worlds came together, the ancient world and the modernity of today. But this image for me and as a UPSC aspirant for Indian is only a reminder of our past. So these images, these symbols which he's using or holding is nothing but all in a way colonial legacy and colonial loot. So you are free to interpret it the way you want to interpret it, but it is a rejoicing moment for a lot of British English people in the world. But as I said, from George V to Queen Victoria, kings and queens in India, specifically from England, only represent one thing, which is colonialism. So we tried to send what is called a message which is a little bit passive aggressive by not saying we didn't attend via the Prime Minister or the President. We attended via the Vice President, but we did because of the fact that we have a good relationship with the UK as of right now, and we want to inculcate that and we want to in a way foster that. So for you prelims examination, Charles III, remember it's Charles III. We already have Charles I and II related to the Glorious Revolution itself. Charles III, he has now succeeded as the next king of the United Kingdom. So let's see, it's an interesting phase in our world human history that where we have these relics along with modernity. We are going to the moon, we are going to Mars, but we still have images like this coming through from the UK. Okay, perfect. Then we have a discussion vis-a-vis early diagnosis and how we can catch multi-drug resistant TB at a young or an initial stage itself. So therefore, tuberculosis in India is generally a major disease, and we have a target of 0 cases by 2030. And the problem in that is because people leave their course vis-a-vis tuberculosis, the TB bacteria itself, what it does, it develops resistance to the drugs which are already used. So in India, the MDR TB, which is multi-drug resistant TB, major load and major what we call as figures of cases come from India itself, close to 0.39 million. And it tells us that in India we need to stop it. As it is, we have a lot of infections which happen in the hospital itself. But here, MDR TB is becoming a major problem, because if it becomes extremely drug resistant TB, then we don't even have 2-3 drugs which can actually even impact it. Bedaquiline, we've already discussed, has now become non-patented drug in India, but that is for MDR TB only. The simple point is, what is the new development? Why are we discussing it here? The new development is very simple. You have a new concept of compromised DNA repair system, which can actually be a better mechanism for drug resistance in the tuberculosis bacteria itself, so that we can check why it is developing multi-drug resistance. So there are two things. We know that it is a mutation in the DNA of both the bacteria, and in a way there are certain mutations which are also happening in the human. But it's about categorically catching the mutation in the bacteria itself. Therefore, the compromised DNA repair concept is that first what we're trying to do is that we're trying to change the code of the bacteria, and we are trying to change the code in the patient also. So there's a new concept that mutations in the DNA can be seen at an early stage in the patient itself, and therefore we can see and catch it in both. So we have CISPR-C9, we can use what we call as the concept of cutting and changing DNA sequences. But the simple point of the matter is there's a new breakthrough. We were, as of right now, in the blind, we were only using drugs, we were only using medicines. Now we are trying to go to the root cause of it, which is mutation both in the bacteria and both in the human DNA. So therefore, this multi-drug resistance, which both the bacteria is developing and sometimes the humans also don't react, we as patients don't react because we've already been exposed to it, is something where we are trying to find this evolutionary mechanism, that can we check where there is the compromised DNA and can we repair it. So therefore, compromised DNA repair concept, something new, again a very new development. Let's see how it develops further. We'll be discussing it for sure later, but as of right now, it's about understanding compromised DNA repair and the concept of MDR TB. Please remember, TB is a very important discussion we've been having quite a lot for the past 6 months. So in the examination, you should expect a question for sure in prelims, if not in mains for sure, when they're talking about multi-drug resistance, tuberculosis, beta-quilin, and now this study of identifying a compromised DNA repair as a novel mechanism to check for the evolution of drug resistance. We need to see how does that drug resistance come in the bacterium, and therefore are we also showing certain changes in our DNA, but it's more about the bacteria. Can we catch the mutation in the bacteria itself? And if we can, then we can make sure that it does not become multi-drug resistant. With this, let's move to the next topic. 2 topics left, very easy, simple. Here, there's a new major encouraging story coming out of North India, wherein government generally is pushing for expansion of cotton farming, and we are seeing that the untimely rains which used to happen in Punjab and Haryana used to impact rice quite a lot, or rice and wheat cultivation, specifically rice quite a lot. And now by using cotton, that rain can be used in a positive sense. So it's about both the fact that you have crop diversification in this sector, which has always been known since the Green Revolution for wheat and rice. On the other hand, we have this movement away from the very water intensive rice towards cotton, which can be produced with the rain which is happening, which impacts or destroys the rice crop but helps the cotton crop. So the basic point of the matter, the prediction is that there will be increased acreage of cotton plantation in northern states itself. In Haryana, cotton, which as of right now has been sown 3.5 lakh hectares, the government has set the target for 7 lakh hectares. Last year it was 5.74 lakh hectares in Haryana itself, and in Punjab it is as of right now 30,000 hectares, and the target is to reach close to 3 lakh hectares against what has happened in the last year, 2.48 lakh hectares. The point is not this data is of no purpose to you. The point is how the climate change or how global warming is changing our cropping pattern also. So the rains, which used to be a bad sign for rice, is now a good sign because it prevents the burning of the cotton balls or the cotton crop itself. Therefore, the cooler temperatures which would impact the rice is not impacting cotton. Rather, it is helping the cotton crop to go up even where we have lack of irrigation facilities. So therefore, the simple point of the matter is you can see cotton mostly not grown in Punjab and Haryana now are becoming major hubs because of the fact that the rain which happens now more or less untimely, unseasonally in Punjab, Haryana based because of the changing global patterns, because of the changing what we call as climate itself in North India, now can be used to push cotton rather than destroying rice. So it helps the farmer also, and it helps government of India also by producing more cotton generally in this sector. So you can see how our cropping pattern is changing with the change in the concept of what we call as the climate, and generally something which used to be disastrous is now used for an advantage. So last topic, and then I'll give you the summary for everything we've done till this point. Very significant for art and culture, very important also. So the Commission for Scientific and Technical Terminologies, which is the CSTT, it has developed or it is developing something very significant. See, as of right now, when it comes to scientific technology, scientific terminologies, when it comes to even philosophy, when it comes to very basic things related to political science, even history, there are Indian languages which have no terms for it. So the CSTT is as of right now working under the Ministry of Education to develop a technical and scientific terminology dictionary for 10 languages which are underrepresented in the learning landscape. This is going to be very significant because it will be sent to the UGC, it will be sent to NET, NEET, everywhere, where we can use these languages for better coverage and integrating more of our students into mainstream education. So what they're trying to develop is a fundamental basic dictionary having close to 5,000 words, free of cost, available to everybody, and close to 1,000 to 2,000 copies which will be printed and sent to all libraries. And the 10 languages which they are actually choosing is Bodo, Santhali, Dogri, Kashmiri, Konkani, Nepali, Manipuri, Sindhi and Maithili along with Sanskrit. These languages, there is no proper technical and scientific terminology dictionary. So the 15 disciplines which are being targeted right now is journalism, public administration, chemistry, botany, zoology, psychology, physics, economics, Ayurveda, mathematics, computer science, political science, agriculture, civil and electrical engineering, where these textbooks, these dictionaries can be sent to the middle and senior school level and also university level, so that these 10 languages are better represented. So that if a student wants to study, for example, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering in Bodo or Santhali or Dogri or Kashmiri, he can do that. This is very significant because now we are trying to expand our linguistic landscape. We are trying to interact and integrate all languages which are represented, the 22 languages which are already there in the 8th schedule of the Indian Constitution. We are trying to make them more technical. This is one of the issues. If you've done official language controversy, you would know that one of the problems with the integrating Hindi was that it did not have a scientific and technical terminology or even a dictionary as of 1947. So therefore we need to understand this very clearly, that this is a very significant development because languages in India represent our diversity and our diversity should also be represented in education. So therefore a very significant development that way for your art and culture, and this again can be asked in the examination in the form of the 10 languages which are mentioned here, and further why is there a need for it. So before I go to the mains question, let's try to consolidate with what we've done today. First, we've tried to understand the simple concept of FDA vaccine for RSV. Please remember respiratory syncytial virus, something which you need to understand and understand it comparatively with common cold and COVID-19. Second, very significantly, the escalation in Russia, wherein just before the Second World War Day, Victory Day celebration, there has been a drone strike over the Kremlin Palace, which in itself houses the president's apartment, which is quite significant, is seen as an assassination attempt on the president. And while Ukraine will say that they have not done it, it is in a way connected to the larger Russia-Ukraine crisis. Ukraine has been hitting much more deeper into Russia. More than that, with the Kinzhal missile and the Patriot defense system coming face to face, we've seen that US has an edge over that, so which is only going to irritate Russia more. Then we move to the Prelims Bytes section where we try to understand 4 very basic but important concepts. First, this very simple technical dictionary for 10 languages in India, very important for art and culture. Then we try to understand this concept of compromised DNA repair in the way we respond to multi-drug resistant TB, and understanding how the bacterium itself evolves and what is the mutation which happens. We need to impact that also and understand that also, and that will help us in making sure that the spread of MDR TB is stopped. Then further, we try to understand old relic of the past in new modernity. In 2023, we have scenes of Charles III becoming the new king of the United Kingdom. And last but not the least, we also try to understand how cotton production is now using the untimely rain in Punjab and Haryana to its advantage. If too much heat was there, then the cotton crop used to burn. Now that is not happening because of the moisture available in the environment generally. So I hope all of these 6 articles made sense to you. Sunday newspaper, no editorial, but very interesting articles related to science and technology and related to culture. So with this, let's look at the mains question. Discuss the risk of respiratory syncytial virus. So what are the risks, or who is impacted the most? How can we mitigate it? So you need to understand what are the measures to mitigate it. You can talk about the vaccine here. So it's a very easy question, straightforward, GS paper 3. The recent trends in the Ukraine-Russia crisis only point towards further escalation and no de-escalation. This is a very open-ended question, and this question will always remain relevant till this topic is there or this issue is there in the world. So I hope that you understand this question as an open-ended question. You can answer it easily. So I hope that you are going to attend the target prelims session in the evening at 7:30. Thank you so much for your patience. I'll see you next Sunday. Take care. Bye-bye.